Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It's not every day that I get to break out my cloth blue mat. In fact, I haven't actually touched this blue mat, I think, in about 15 years. But for some reason, I cannot find my neoprene ocean mat for the table. And I don't know where it's gone. It's disappeared. I also have a microphone plug into my phone this time. The last video was the same. I'm trying out this microphone, so hopefully you let me know if it's better, if you can hear my voice clearer. I ran into a problem in previous videos where when I zoomed out the phone, the sound zoomed out too for some reason, even though I'm in the exact same spot. It's just the camera lens. So to alleviate that issue from happening again, we got a microphone. It's a really cheap thing, it's nothing, but hopefully you'll see me better. But blue mat, microphone, it must be a special day. Well, it is a special day because there is another Broadside Empires of Steel Kickstarter going on, and this time it's bringing in the French. The first one was obviously the starter pack, the starter game, British and Germans. Then you got, I think, we got Americans, we got, who did we get out of that? We got Americans, we got Austro-Hungarians, we got some Italians, we got Japanese, Russians, we got a whole pile. Well, we're now on to the French. And if you're a World War I gamer like me, or especially a naval addict like I am, you will recognize that the importance of having the French in the game. Well, they're finally here. And the Kickstarter's on now. I think there's over a week left to go in it. It's already funded. It's about 200% funded. It's gone through a couple of stretch goals, and they're working on the third one. We're very close to the third stretch goal. Well, I was very kindly given, the boys sent me over some files to print off and just take a look at to see what I felt. And I'm just going to make a little video on it now, if you don't mind. Now, it's not going to take too long because there's really not a whole lot to say about this game that I haven't said in previous videos. Essentially, it's a World War I rule set. You can see the size of the figures here next to my hand. The scale is pretty good. The detail is amazing on them. You can tell from the very first Kickstarter to this Kickstarter how much they've learned and improved on their models and how they print. Now, I always kind of stress test when I'm 3D printing, because these are all 3D files. There's no physical product to be sent to you. They're just files. But I always stress test a file, especially if I have to pay for one. If it's a free file off Thingiverse, I try and fiddle around with it to see, because I know there's going to be maybe holes in it, there's going to be something. But I would say, at the very bottom of ability when it comes to opening files, messing around in different types of programs. I'm really not interested in it. I don't have time for it. And the files that you get from this Kickstarter are foolproof, in my opinion. I stress tested these. I downloaded the files. I put them right on the plate. I didn't support them, nothing. I put them right on the plate, and I just printed them. And they printed off perfect. Now, right on the plate's a little weird, because if the hull is thicker, like this, no problem. If the hull is really thin, sometimes you get the odd pre-dreadnought that has a really thin hull, like, for instance, this is the Radetzky. Its hull isn't that thick. Sometimes when you're taking it off with your little blade, it snaps. So I printed them off twice. I printed them off once just flat on the plate, and one kind of up at a 45-degree angle, and then kind of tilted 15 degrees to the side. Those ones printed off great. Well, sorry, both of them printed off great. But I'm showing you the ones that sat flat on the. Well, didn't sit flat. They sat at a 45-degree, tilted about 15. And I had not turned on my 3D printer in about a month. I literally had to get a little plastic spatula and stir the resin because it had kind of separated in the vat. I didn't do anything with it. I just stirred it, turned it on, and hit play. And it printed no problems. So the files are good files. The ships look great. And it was really easy to do. So hopefully the fact that it's a 3D printed thing doesn't turn you off. I was mentioning to my wife yesterday, like, how amazing it is that it's come so far. When I first started 3D printing, all the files were basically free, but the the actual like files themselves were hit and miss, or giant holes. Sometimes there'd be like a cavity in a ship and it would explode. I'm not talking about Broadside, I'm talking about just generic stuff. But 3D printing has come so far that the cost has come down, and the ability of people has come so far that there's so many files out there that you could pay for and get some really good stuff. And Broadside, the game itself, is really cool. I mean, I have a battle report filmed, but I haven't posted it yet because I'm editing it, and that'll be up eventually. Maybe you'll get a sense for it. But one of the things that I like about not Warhammer, but the Horus Heresy and these types of games that you'll see me talking about is that you get to list build, and there's some meta involved. And this game has that kind of stuff. Another thing that I will say is that there are, I think no one would argue, probably more detailed figures out there. I mean, GHQ, let's not argue with it ourselves. GHQ makes some of the best naval models in the world. But they are expensive, and they are 1/2400 scale. These models are gaming pieces, and as gaming pieces, they are spectacular. And the detail has come such a long way from the beginning that really, I mean, there is still a difference between the metal GHQ figures and these, but I prefer these for gaming with. Maybe if I was making a diorama, you know, I might want the GHQ figures. If I was making a diorama and I was gluing the model down and it wasn't going to be handled a lot, because all those little like gibbons and cranes and stuff and the turrets, once they're bent on a GHQ figure, it is next to impossible to get them to straighten up again. And when you have a $20 Canadian GHQ figure that you painted and spent a long time painting, it's fiddly to paint because it's small, and it has a bent or cracked barrel, it's like Depression Town. Hopefully you have GHQ figures and you understand. Another thing with GHQ figures is that I have played many games with friends, especially one in particular, David, where we would use a GHQ figure and you'd pick it up and you'd go to move it, and all of a sudden you got buttery fingers and it would slip and it would fall, and then everything's bent. It's just ruined. If that happens with these ships, which usually won't, but you can reprint them. It's not a complete loss. But enough about that. The game is great. It's got a good turn sequence. It's got a meta building thing that I really enjoy, and the models as gaming pieces are fantastic. Now we're just going to take a quick look at 4 ships that I was sent. 3 of them are French and 1 of them is German. Now the first ship that we have here is, I think this is the Bouvet, or the Bouvet, I don't know. I keep trying to say Duvet, but it's Bouvet, I think. Now this was just printed. You'll see the green resin that I used. I got this resin really cheap for like $5 a bottle on Amazon, and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. I'm like, look how cheap this resin is, but it's garbage, like hot garbage, but it was cheap. And these 4 models were the last of that resin gone. So it's printed off in this green resin. It's very brittle stuff, and painted in painted gray. Now I didn't paint these ships yet, but I want to just give you, forgive my fat fingers there, give you a look at what you're getting. This is the French Pre-Dreadnought Bouvet. We'll just take a look at that next to a Pre-Dreadnought. What would be comparable? I don't really have anything too comparable, really, but we can look at the Slava. Look how far they've come, this company. It's really nice. That's the Bouvet. Now we'll get on to the next one, the double barrel. This is the Charlemagne, or Charlemagne, I don't know. It's a French word. Or is it German? I can't tell. Anyway, it's the Charlemagne. It's a French vessel, at least. I still have to sand the bottom of it because I do that usually last when I get the actual like base, which I haven't gotten yet, but I'll get that. I have backed Kickstarter, so I'll get that eventually. And I'll put it on its base. But you can see again next to the the Slava again. The Slava is a bit of a French design anyway, so they look very similar. Hopefully my thumbs are in the way there. If I get a German, do I have a German pre-dreadnought? I do. I have the Deutschland. You can see kind of how they measure up. Really nice. The next one is the Bretagne. This is a more modern ship. It has 13.5-inch guns, 10 of them. So on par with anything that the British, it's probably, I would say it's probably a King George V equivalent. Might be an Iron Duke equivalent, but I'd say probably about King George V-ish. And you can see all the turrets there and all the deck detail. These casemate guns, they all printed out no problem. Never had a single issue. The turrets printed off, no problem. I mean, it's a gaming piece. So there's just enough detail in this gaming piece that you can handle it, and it's sturdy enough where you won't have to worry about it. Whereas a GHQ, let's say you're getting the Yamato or the Iowa, they're big ships at 120 or 12400 scale. So you can grab them pretty good. But if you have a pre-dreadnought like the Miska or the Borodino, you can just see in slow motion, like going to go down and pick up the ship, and all of a sudden your thumb, like you're miscalculating your thumb, and there's a bent or broken piece. You don't have that problem with these. They're very, same thing. They're very sturdy. Really nice models. This is the Bretagne. One thing about this per ship is, wasn't this the ship, I think this was the ship that was blown up at Mars El Kabir, the battle where the British Royal Navy essentially ambushed or attacked the French in their port in case they'd fall into German hands. I think that's where this ship met its end. But it's essentially an Iron Duke or King George V class equivalent. And you have him, you have the Charlemagne, which would be a equivalent to the Slava or the Borodino class. And then you have a few years before that, you have the Beauvais. So really nice. It's obviously great if you want to collect all the ships, which I do, but it's another aspect is you get to war game World War I in the Mediterranean. You get to do the pre-bombardment of Gallipoli. You get to do fun scenarios like attacking the forts, the Turkish forts on the way to Constantinople. You get to fight the Austrians. You get to fight with Italians. There's World War I naval combat is British and German. Everyone knows British and German. And then the Americans arrived too late to really do anything. The Germans weren't doing a whole lot. But there was another theater, which Turkish, German, Austrian, Italian, and French in the Mediterranean, which gives you so many chances of neat games, scenarios. So it's nice to finally have the French. Again, the Kickstarter is funded, so they've delivered every Kickstarter early that I can remember, so I don't think there's any risk involved. The last ship is this behemoth here. This is, you can probably tell from looking at it at this angle, it's a very Germany-looking World War I ship, and it is German. Let me take these French out of the way, even though the Kickstarter is mainly the French. This is the Mackensen. This was never ocean-worthy. It was launched. The Germans did launch it at the end of the war. Oh, look, a turret came off. I didn't glue him on. Sad face, McGarnagles. The Germans did launch, I think, 3 of this ship. They launched the Mackensen, the Graf Spee, something with Prince in it. Prinz or something. I'm not going to say the German words, but they launched a few of these ships, and they were in the midst of building them. But by that time, they were out of a lot of supplies, so they couldn't really do a whole lot. It's a battle cruiser. It's an improved design on the Derfflinger, which we have here. The Derfflinger has a set of 12-inch guns, and the Mackensen has a 14.5-inch gun, I think. 14.5, yeah, about a 14-inch gun. So big improvement. You can see the model. This is the Generation 1 Kickstarter 1, you can see how much they've learned, how much more detail there is. The funnels have like kind of like gridding, and the superstructure looks just a lot more detailed. So they've come a long way, and that's good to see. So this is the Mackeson. This is an early bird or an add-on. If you got the Kickstarter early, you get it for free, and if not, you can add it on for a few bucks. I can't remember what I did. I think I added on, but here it is, and there's the turd again. That's a shame. Sorry, boys. Yeah, we're at the Kickstarter. So let me just take a look, compare this ship to a few others so you can see the scale of this ship. Really nice. You already seen the Derflinger. So you can see it's about the same size, maybe a little longer than that. If we do the Lion, everyone's favorite pompous ship, the Lion's about the same size. But I mean, if I had to choose between the Lion and the Mackeson, well, obviously no real choice there. We'll take a look at an American ship. This is the Pennsylvania. Quite a bit longer there, but Pennsylvania probably has the firepower. I mean, it's a battleship, and the Mackeson is a battle cruiser, so really not really a whole lot to say there. And we'll do one more. We'll do the Conte de Cavour. This is an Italian ship. Much bigger. Now, none of my ships are historical camo patterns, or these were just gaming pieces, and I liked the idea of them looking a little different. So the Germans are darker, the British are lighter, Americans kind of like a bluish hue, and Italians a greenish hue. And then we have the Radetzky, or no, let's not do Radetzky. Let's do Tettigerhoff. Do I have that? Yes, I do. This is an Austrian ship. It's tiny in comparison. And if we bring in the Bretagne, whatever it's called, words, you can see that. Bring in a comparable British ship. I don't have a comparable British ship here with me, but I have the Grosser Kurfürst. About comparable to the Bretagne, so we'll see. It's a... Anyway, I'm starting to ramble. The Kickstarter's got about a week left in it. This is a very poor video, but I just thought I felt the need to inform anyone who didn't know that the Kickstarter is on. It's gone through 2 stretch goals. We already have the beginnings of the Austrians, as well as a couple of other... I think the next stretch goal has some a Greek ship in it, and there's also some cool forts and some terrain that I wouldn't mind having. So hopefully we get to the 3rd stretch goal. I'm sure we will. It's about 8 days left in it now that I check. It's Broadside, Empires of Steel. It is the French with some Ottomans. One last thing. The Ottomans give any gamer and enthusiast a chance to have some pretty gnarly fleet build lists. Just checking their fleets. They didn't really build any of their own ships, obviously, but they do have the German battlecruiser Goeben, the Salem something or other. They have that. They have some British ships. They have got some old British battleships. They got some old British armored cruisers. So they're going to be a pretty eclectic group or fleet, a pretty eclectic fleet to play against. And prior to this Kickstarter, I didn't know anything about the Ottomans. I just knew the Goeben thing, but I didn't look into anything else. I didn't even realize they had a navy. Well, I knew they had a navy, but I didn't realize they did anything with it. But apparently they did. And in my reading on that theater, it actually is pretty cool. So I'm really looking forward to that. 19 minutes, a little long. Broadside, Empires of Steel. Give it a look. I'll leave the link in the description below. And I hope you check it out. Okay, thanks and bye for now.